My name is Ellen Lavinia Badrick, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and introduce you to my family. These are my parents. My father, William Badrick, was born in 1835 in Wingrave in Buckinghamshire, and he was a farm labourer. My mother, Dinah Taplin, was born in 1834 in Bloxham in Oxfordshire. William's first wife was Ruth, but she died in 1861, leaving William with their two sons, Henry and William Jr. He then married my mother Dinah in 1862 and they had three daughters, Annie born in 1864, Jane born in 1870, and I was the middle one, born in 1867 in Wingrave. By 1881, we were living in Bennett's Lane in Wingrave. My half-brother William was working on the farm with my father, and my sister Annie had become a straw platter. I married Thomas Amos Hedges on the 28th of May 1883, in Wingrave. Here he is in the bowler hat, with my father and I. Thomas was born on the 15th of February 1862, just up the road from me, in Rousham, Buckinghamshire. His father was Charles Hedges, born in 1835 in Aston Abbotts, and his mother was Sarah Tipping, born in 1837 in Hertfordshire. Thomas and I had 9 children. First we had 4 girls, and then we had 5 boys. In 1884, we had our firstborn, Agnes Isabella Hedges. Agnes married William Andrews and had 5 children. She died in 1965. In 1887, we had Alice Ena Hedges. Alice married Harry Hawkins, an Australian who served as a soldier in World War I. After the war, she moved to Australia to marry him. Together they had 3 children and lived on a sheep farm in the outback. Alice died in 1965. In 1889, Thomas and I had our third daughter, Ruth Maud Hedges. Ruth was in service when she had her first child, Ruby. This is Ruby. In those days, it was very difficult for a single woman to bring up a child, so Thomas and I took Ruby in and brought her up as our own daughter. During World War I, Ruth worked in a munitions factory at Waltham Abbey. Here she is at work, on the right. In 1920, Ruth married Fred Reeder and in 1922 they had a son, Duncan. She died in 1986. In 1891, Thomas and I were still living in Wingrave when we had our 4th child, Mary. She worked for a photographer, and in 1915, she married Donald McCallum. They had 2 children, Donald Jr. and Joan. Mary was known in the family for being extremely clean and house-proud, and even used to wash the lamp post outside her house. She died in 1980. In 1894, we had our first son, Thomas William Hedges. Thomas, who we all called Boy, served as a gunner in the 290th Brigade, Royal Field Artillery in World War I. We took this picture when he was home on leave. You can see that he has a good conduct stripe on his left sleeve, denoting 2 years of good behavior on his conduct sheet. He also has a wound stripe. There is a bulge at the bottom right of his tunic, showing that he was carrying a field dressing. In his left breast pocket is a lanyard which held the adjustment key, that he used to set shell fuses. Sadly, like so many other young soldiers, Boy was killed in action on the 24th of March 1918. He died at the 46 Casualty Clearing Station in Noyon, France and was buried in the cemetery there. He was just 24. Back in Buckinghamshire, Thomas and I had our second son, Johnny Hedges, in 1896 who everyone in the family called Jack. By the time he was 15, he was working as a cowman on the farm in Southgate with Thomas and Boy. By this time, we all lived on the farm in East Pole Cottages, all of us crammed into just 4 small rooms. In 1915, Jack joined the East Surrey Regiment, which was known as the Journey's End Battalion. He was a private. He fought for his country in France and was discharged in 1919. In 1920 he married Alexandra Irene Pizzi and they had 14 children. He became a park gardener and died in 1948. In 1899, Thomas and I had our third son, Edward Frank Hedges, who we all called Ted. Like his elder brothers, Ted joined up and served in the London Regiment. He was wounded, shipped home and then returned to France with the King's Royal Rifle Corps. Edward is on the left in this photo. He has a wound stripe on his left sleeve and medal ribbons too. After the war, Ted became a tunnel miner. He married Edith Cozy in 1922 and they had 2 children. He died in 1983. In 1903, our 4th son, Ernest, was born. Ernest worked for the water company in Edmonton and he married Florence Smith in 1924. Together they had 4 children. He died in 1992. Finally, in 1909, we had our last child, Harold Hedges. During World War II, he served in Barnet Fire Brigade, putting out fires in the London Blitz. After the war, he worked as a chauffeur for the MD of John Lewis. Eventually, he became a mechanic at a garage in Enfield Town. He married Dorothy Hogan in 1932 and together they had 3 children. Sadly, Dorothy passed away in 1948. Harold then married Olive James in 1955. He died in 1994. My dad, William Badrick, was alive to see all of his grandchildren born. Here he is on the carnival float in the 1920s when he was crowned the oldest man in Hendon. He died in 1934, at the ripe old age of 99. My lovely Thomas and I were married for 53 years. Sadly, Thomas died in 1936 at the age of 74. Coming from a long line of strong Badrick women, I lived on for a further 24 years. I had a cottage on Slade's Hill in Enfield, near my daughter, Ruth. I kept chickens, and grew all my own vegetables. I finally died in 1960, at the grand old age of 93. Thomas and I had so many grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and now in the 21st century we even have great-great-grandchildren. How lovely that lots of these cousins grew up together, still know each other, and meet up at family get-togethers.